Hi friends. In today's episode, episode number 13, we will be covering about an important topic as far as production control series is concerned. So if you're watching this episode for the first time, my name is Sriram Sivashankaran and I have been posting articles, documents and videos related to Dynamics 365 F&O. And if you want to get regular updates, please make sure that you follow my profile in LinkedIn or subscribe to my channel in YouTube T365 Talks, right? So the agenda for today's session, we will quickly get into that. But before that, first of all, you need to know that we are already completed 12 episodes covering basic setups, configurations related to production control. And in today's episode, we will be covering the fundamental basics of costing sheet configuration, because without knowing the costing sheet configuration, you will not be able to know what is the estimation and what is the realized cost, and how we can configure the overall costing structure, and also how to define the indirect costing with respect to your labor or factory overhead or miscellaneous expenses, how we can configure it in your costing sheet. That's what we are going to see in today's video, right? So let's get into the agenda for the session. So the agenda is primarily to understand what is the prime objective of using costing sheet in production control, how it actually controls the format of the costing structure, and also the indirect cost, and then we will also quickly see a demo in Dynamics 365 to understand about how you can do it individually in your system, whether as a implementation consultant or as an end user, to configure the costing sheet so that you can view the indirect cost related to your manufacturing or production facility, right? So first of all, what is a costing sheet? Why we need to use a costing sheet? The two main objectives of using the costing sheet is to define the format for displaying the cost of goods sold. So so we have the cogs, based on which for each and every item you have the raw material cost, you have the labor cost, you have the machine hourly rate charges for the machines, you may have the selling goods and admin expenses, you may have marketing expenses. So you need to define the format of displaying these cost of goods sold. So overall, whatever the cost you have, indirect cost, maybe your admin expenses, or your electricity expenses, or it can be your indirect labor expenses, or whatever it may be. So what should be the format in which you want to view all these costing details, so that it is easy for you to take appropriate actions. And then the next major objective is to define the basis for calculating indirect cost. So these indirect cost are primarily, or those costs which are not directly linked to your core production operations. It is not your raw material or man method material, generally the four M's of manufacturing, but it can be your electricity charges, it can be your admin expenses. So how do we calculate the those indirect cost and add that also as part of your production expenses, right? So that you will get a whole idea about, whenever you are arriving at the sales price, you will get a whole idea about how to include those indirect cost also in your production expenses, which is very very important, right? So not just including the raw material cost, or your even when we discussed about in the episode number 9 about the costing, we discussed about how to incorporate the cost of the raw material item, how to incorporate the cost of the operations. But how do we incorporate the indirect cost which are involved in the production? Whether it is your electricity charges, or your admin charges, or even if you have some other indirect cost, how do we incorporate that? So that's the main two core objectives of using costing sheet in Dynamics 365. So first of all, why define a format? So we discussed about defining the format using a costing sheet, right? So this actually provides a segmentation of cost based on the cost groups. So in D365, we define the cost groups and allocate it to the respective cost categories and to the items, right? So but these cost groups are, like I said, is assigned to the items and the cost categories, and also to the indirect cost. But if you want to segment whatever the cost available in the system with respect to material, machine, man, labor, or overhead, you need to segment all those costs so that it gives a good idea about overall cost calculations. So which is contributing high, whether material is contributing high or overhead is contributing high. So until unless you segment those, you will not be able to visually understand which is actually contributing more as far as your costs is concerned. And also multiple cost groups that are related to the material can be aggregated using the parent-child node relationships. So you will be able to get a quick understanding. Let's say with respect to material, I may have charges for material washing, material, and then material cleaning. So those additional charges, if I have, I can add it as part of the material. Let's say as part of the machine. In case of machine, I may have other expenses like maintenance cost. I may have expenses like electricity charges. So those kind of additional charges you can group all those related to the machine or material to the respective nodes, so that you will be able to find appropriate relation for those when you actually view the costing sheet in the production. Also, basically, when we say overhead, these are expenses not directly linked to the producing the product, the FG item. So that's what we primarily mean overhead expenses. So I will also share the Microsoft iLearn link, so that you can, if you want to get deeper understanding of these functional concepts, please do check out the same. I will share the link in the video description. And then the second part here is calculating the indirect cost. So we said first main objective is to segment the different cost items into respective categories. But the second most important objective is calculating the indirect cost. So the indirect cost reflects manufac- manufacturing overhead that is associated with the production of the manufactured item. So this can be your, like I said, your admin expenses or selling expenses or manufacturing expenses, or simply electricity charges. So which are basically not directly related to your manufacturing of the item, but indirectly related to your cost. So in order to calculate those indirect cost, you need to use this particular costing sheet, so that it can be used in every production order which is getting generated. So when you select a cost group type as node, you can add a sub node such as rate or suggest. So quickly, we will also in this episode we will see how to create a cost group type node, and then allocate a rate or surcharge sub node, so that the calculations are taken for those charges, and it will reflect in your costing sheet in production order also. So basically, it can be of four types, I would say: surcharge, rate, or it can be input unit or output unit based. If you select surcharge, then it represents a percentage of the value. So whatever the surcharge you are mentioning, it represents, it takes whatever the value you are mentioning in the surcharge, it takes a percentage of it at the end of the cost what you are given in the cost group. So we will see this in the demo. And rate represents an amount per hour. So whatever the amount you are mentioning it over there, that is considered as an absolute value, not considered as a percentage. If you take surcharge, it is taken as a percentage of value, but in case of rate, it is taken as an absolute value, and it is considered as a per hour charge. Let's say your machine, you are calculating the machine rate, hourly rate. So you want to give a depreciation cost also as part of your production costing. So in that case, if you are mentioning 5 as an absolute amount, then every hour the machine runs, it adds $5 or 5 rupees to every hour the machine runs in your as part of your routing operation. And it can also be input unit based and output unit based. In case of input unit based and output unit based, primarily these are depending upon the amount of quantity that you have in raw material and in your finished good, based on which the rate will be calculated. If you want to do that, you can also do assign it in the costing sheet. I know this sounds a little confusing right now, but this is the fundamental definition. What you need to keep in your mind is the basis of using costing sheet is to define a format and to define the calculation for indirect cost. And I just want you guys to remember only these two as of now, because until unless we get into the system, you will not be able to relate to what I am talking right now. So now, defining nodes in the costing sheet is the very important aspect. So I just taken a screenshot, and very quickly we will get into the D365 screen. But here, like I said, first of all, we will have a root node, and there will be a parent node, and there will be a child node. The child node of cost group and total types, we will be able to configure the calculation based on which you need to capture the cost. So each level in the costing sheet consists of a node that is composed of totals and subtotals. So when you configure the costing sheet, you need to be absolutely very careful in terms of configuring the nodes and the subnodes. So each and every cost calculations are based on the subnodes and the parent-child node relationships, right? So so that's it for the presentation. I know this may sound little hard, but let's get into the system so that you can get a better understanding of the same. Um, so let me first of all let you know that the under cost management you need to navigate to cost management, indirect cost, and you have costing sheets. So this is the costing sheet page which is common for the entire production order setup. Whatever you have, whatever the setup or configuration which you make, this will be applicable to all the production orders. And based on this format, your indirect cost will be available in the costing sheet of the production order. So in another tab, I'll also open the production order. So this also I want to tell you that you and if you already have an active page for the costing, then system will throw a prompt saying you have opened the costing sheet page in another session, because we cannot configure two costing sheets parallelly. So that's the reason system is trying to say warn us. So I'll just then it takes me to the home page. So let me open a production order, production control, all production orders. Then there is a production order which is already estimated. Let me take it back to the created state. So all you have to do is you need to reset the status. I'll reset the status, and now the status is changed to created, right? So because why I changed to created is only when we estimate, I want to view the cost estimation. So if I go to manage cost view calculation details, as of now there are no calculation details. When we estimate, we will get an estimation for manufacturing one quantity of this shirt, right? So let me go to the costing sheet. Let us try to understand this first. So there is a root, and then like I said in the presentation, uh, so we have a root node, parent node, and a child node. So this is a root node, and we have two parent nodes which are cost of purchase and cost of conversion. The cost of conversion, we have two child nodes. One is for cost of material, and then overhead purchases, and then cost of transportation overhead. And under cost of conversion, we have material, we have labor, we have overhead on conversion, and overhead on conversion we have this is the overhead on purchases. So this is basically for the overhead on purchases. This is overhead on conversions. So overhead on conversions, we have three sections. One is for plant overhead, another one is for material overhead, another one is for labor overhead, right? So this is what I was telling, the root, parent, and child node relationships. So whenever if you want to configure a new node, then you need to place the active node appropriately. You need to select the active node appropriately. That's what I need to say. So let's say if I click on the active, if I use this as an active node, this is the parent node. From this, if I click on new, system will ask me to select a node type, which is should be total or cost group. So if it is a total, it will be considered as a new child node. Or if it is a cost group, I can create a new cost group type and assign a cost group in it. So let's say if keep my active node over here, now if I click on new, it's not going to ask me for the total. So let's say what is the type of select the node type. So here if you see, there are only four types whichever we have discussed: surcharge, rate, output unit based, or input unit based. Because once I create this node, it will be added under the plant overhead, and it will not be added under the overhead on conversions. So if I had placed my active cell on COC, it would have added a active node under overhead on conversions. So let me show that also to you. Let's say I'm keeping it under COC. Now I'm trying to add a overhead expense under the overhead on conversions. So I kept it, either I can keep it here or here or here, that's not a concern. So let me click on new. So I'm going to create a cost group, and let me try to create for electricity charges maybe. I think before to this, let's try to estimate it so that you will get a good understanding of what we are trying to do. So if you can see here that for this item, this is actually created, right? This is not at estimated. So if you look at here, I think um, cost of material, okay, cost of labor. I think cutting is configured. Cutting, we are also, because we are also performing the cutting operation, sewing, and then we are doing a packing. So for this particular item, if you are watching this entire series, you must be already aware of what are the operation setup we have done, right? So in case of labor, there is site 2, which is actually configured for the amount of 2. So this is the amount which I was telling. So that takes the absolute value or percentage that is based on the surcharge or based on the rate. So here it is rate. So it's going to take the percentage based on the hourly rate it is going to consider. So the labor cost is based on the hourly rate. So let's try to estimate the production order right now. So we are manage cost. I'll go to production order and let me estimate the production order. Click on OK. So the production order is estimated. Now let me go to manage cost and click on view calculation details. So now here you can see the indirect labor cost is actually calculated, and it is consumption for per unit is 1.25. So this is the total hours is 1.25. So the consumption per, so we actually configured it like for site 2, the rate should be in multiples of 2. So per hour the consumption is 1.25, that is the total hour per unit, sorry, total hour. So into 2 it is actually 2.50, and sales price per unit it has taken 2.75. That is because if you go to this cost, this is the child node for labor overhead. In labor overhead there is a cost group which is attached to it. So if I click on this cost group, you can see the profit percentage is 10%. So that's the reason it has taken 2.5. 10 percentage of 2.5 is 0.25. From 2.5 another 0.25 is added. So that's the reason the recommended sales price per unit is showing us 2.75, right? So I hope you got it. Let's try to create a new node so that you will better understand the same. Because the whole intention of this particular video is to make you guys clear on the costing sheet configuration. So as of now, if you see, there is only indirect labor cost. So let me go back and take it back to created state. Go to production order, reset the status, create a state. So I'm taking it back to created status. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a new node uh, under this overhead charges, and I'm naming it as I'll create a cost group. First you need to create a cost group and attach to it electricity charges, because I have already created a cost group for electricity charges. So that's the reason I am creating a cost group. So cost group is created, and just make sure that you create a cost group for the same. I have already created a cost group, and we discussed in detail about how to configure a cost group in our episode number 9. If you have missed it, please do check out the same. And this is a cost group type indirect, and the cost group type should be indirect and not direct manufacturing or anything else. So this is the cost group type. So I have selected the cost group type. So you can see I have created it as a node. Now let me save this. So once I save this, we have an error. It says cost group is of indirect type, but it has no calculation node. So it has no calculation nodes attached, which is very, very important. If you see material overhead has a calculation node attached to it, plant overhead has a calculation node attached to it. But in our case, we don't have the electricity charges does not have any calculation node attached to it. So we need to create a calculation node. Click on new, and then let me select a rate, and let me select electricity rate. So this is the code which I'm going to use. We click on OK. Then here you can give the subtype as process. So I'm just trying to do a map it to a process of cutting. So here subtype should be mapped to cutting. So I'm mapping it to cutting. So in the rate section, you need to map the costing version. So we discussed about the costing version also in episode number 9. So I'm not discussing about the costing version now. and this is specific to site 2, right? And let me this is specific to site 2, and I need to give the ledger posting. So I'll just copy paste the ledger posting from my previous um, node. So 600,522,15025. Okay, I'll just use the same absorption, because this is going to be the posting account in which the cost will be absorbed. So let me save it. Okay, the costing sheet is saved. Fine. But still the point here is you need to make sure that you need to activate it. I have not given the amount over here. Let me give the amount as electricity charges as, okay, 5. And then let me activate it. Okay, so this is activated. So let me try to save the costing sheet again. If you want, you can do a validation also. So system will tell you if there are any error messages. Then system will throw an error saying the costing sheet is not valid. Please check along with the error log. It will tell you what is the configuration which is missing. Let me save the costing sheet again. So now we have created a new node called electricity charges, and for site 2, and the amount we have given is for 5. So based on the hours, it should consider 5 per hour as electricity charge, whenever it is actually doing a production estimate. So let's go back. So now we have already taken this back to estimate, sorry, created state. Now let me try to estimate this production order, so that along with the labor rate, we need to have electricity rate also in our costing sheet. So let's see whether we have done the configuration correctly or not. So we are in manage cost. Let me go to view calculation details. That's fantastic. So now we got the electricity rate also. So we had a labor cost which was actually picked from this particular node. Now I have a configured electricity rate also. So now the electricity rate is also reflecting over here. For so total hours of work electricity which is actually required is for 1 hour. So for 1 hour I'm charging $5 per hour. So totally $5 is the total value. And here also the profit setting is 10 per, not, this is not 10%. Let me check. If I go to electricity charges, so E1, okay, so the profit setting is 5 percentage. So that's the reason it has taken a 5 percentage out of 5, which is 0.25. So 5.25 is added to the sales price per unit. So at last, if you go to costing sheet for this particular production order, you can also view the overall electricity charges and the labor overhead for the same. So this is how you configure a costing sheet, and configure the format in which you want to view the material, manufacturing and labor charges and your overhead charges. And like I said, that's how you will be able to get a good idea about what is the contribution of the cost, especially your COGS calculations. You will be able to get a good idea about the production order line. So we already saw a costing sheet demo. So like I said, make sure that you do not run it in multiple sessions. Otherwise, it will really affect your costing sheet structure. So that's why system is also throwing a prompt for the same. And by default, the out-of-the-box security roles that can access costing sheet includes your account manager and inventory accounting clerk and inventory accountant. So they have view access, but accounting manager is by default have the edit access. So I will also share the additional resources to learn for the costing sheet, because costing sheet is a very important concept as far as the production control is concerned. So you need to make sure that you need to learn in depth, and you need to get the in depth understanding of costing sheet. And I will strongly recommend you to practice the same repeatedly until unless you get a good hold of costing sheet. I will also share these links in the description. So that's it for this episode number 13. And in episode number 14, we will quickly cover the important production inquiries and reports. And with episode number 15, we will be signing off this particular series of production control. Please do support by sharing this video with your Dynamics network. And please don't forget to like and comment about whatever you have learned using this particular video. I will be happy to hear from you. Of course, happy to learn from you also. If you have find out something interesting, please do share the same in the comment section. It will help the people who are reading the comments especially. So to make sure, always just make sure that you subscribe to my channel, Shriram Sivashankaran D3 Strike Talks. I just made it very clear to post videos related to Dynamics 365 F1 Row on a regular basis. So please make sure that you subscribe to my channel to get notified whenever I post any new videos. Thanks for watching.